Daredevil Born Again. And we got an official synopsis that's been released. It's supposed to be about Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk trying to work together in order to help the people of New York, but slowly but surely their pasts come to haunt them again. And I think the main thing with this one is that Brad Winterbaum said officially that the first 3 seasons of the Netflix version of Daredevil are going to be part of the MCU canon. So it's not going to be a complete reboot of the Daredevil character. This will be more of like a continuation from the Netflix series. I mean, obviously it still has that kind of Marvel tone to it, but they're kind of leaning more towards what the Netflix series was going for. And then, speaking of which, we got a bunch of cast members from the original Daredevil series coming back into this new series. Deborah Ann Wool as Karen Page, Eldon Henson as Foggy Nelson, Wilson Bethel as Bullseye, and Ayelet Zerur as Vanessa. So I think that could be really cool because I know that they were originally filming last year, back in March, and it was supposed to go on for a couple months, but then because of the writer's strike got shut down. And then, once the writer's strike was over and they were able to watch the footage over and, start editing together, Kevin Feige and Brad Winterbaum were just kind of watching it and we're just realizing that it wasn't really what they were wanting it to be. It was more like a procedural drama, and Daredevil didn't suit up until like episode 4. So, they fired those original showrunners and they got new showrunners. They got a showrunner named Dario Scartopane, who worked on the Netflix version of Punisher, and then Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who worked on a couple other Marvel shows to serve as directors, which I think is a really good choice. I think they didn't want to isolate the fans of the original Netflix version, and they kind of wanted to have those original Netflix fans, which I'm a fan of, be included in this series, and then also introduce new fans to the show. So I think that was a really good choice. So yeah, we'll see how it all goes once it finally gets released. And there's supposed to be 18 episodes, and they're supposed to be divided into 9 episode halves, just because I think 18 is just a lot for one series. So I think they're kind of leaning more into like the 13 episode structure that was in more of the Netflix versions, and make it more like a series instead of just like one big 9-hour movie. Because I know that was a problem that they were having with the other television series, is that it just felt like one long movie, and they were just having executive producers over the show and everything like that, instead of having like a showrunner and actual television writers, to make it more like serialized television rather than just like one big movie, cut up into like 6 episodes or 8 episodes or whatever it might be. So I think that retooling that Brad Winterbaum and Marvel Television are doing, moving forward is actually a really good thing, and that'll definitely help the series that are coming out moving forward. So yeah, I'm really excited for the future of that. And then also with this one, Wilson Fisk will be running for mayor, and that's supposed to be based on one of the storylines from the comic books, which I'm not familiar with, but I think it's an obvious choice. I know there was a cliffhanger at the end of Echo, kind of like a post-credits scene of Wilson Fisk kind of like licking his wounds after his battle with Echo, kind of mind altering him and everything like that, re-experiencing his childhood trauma. And he's like looking at the screen how New York's in need of someone who like fight criminals and everything like that, someone who would be a leader in that aspect. So that kind of gets like the light bulb going off in his head for him to run for mayor. So we'll see how that goes, and I'm sure like as he's trying to like run for mayor and everything like that, Daredevil's going to be trying to expose him for criminal that it really is. And then I know Punisher's supposed to be in it too, and there's supposed to be a couple of characters who represent the police force. The actor Jeremy Earl is playing a character named Cole North, who's supposed to be the head of the police force, and him and Wilson Fisk are trying to team up in order to get rid of all vigilantes within New York City, including Daredevil and Punisher. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think that'll be a really interesting dynamic. And then we also got some other casting announcements. Margarita Lavivo will be playing Heather Glenn, and she's supposed to be a love interest to Matt Murdock. Michael Gandolfini as David Blade, Jania Walton as Bibi Urich, and she's supposed to be a young journalist. Artie Frashon as Buck Cashman, and Lou Taylor Pusey, who's been cast in an undisclosed role. But yeah, overall, I'm really excited about Daredevil Born Again, especially the fact that they had this kind of creative overhaul in order to make it lean more towards the Netflix version of Daredevil, and the fact that the Netflix version of Daredevil is now MCU canon, I think is really cool. And the fact that they're bringing all these cast members from that show into the series, and they're leaning more towards the tone of that show, I think is a really good choice. And we got a bunch of new stuff for Daredevil Born Again at the D23 Expo, including a brand new logo, which looks really cool. Kind of really fits the dark tone that they were setting with the Netflix series. We also got a brand new image of the Punisher in his classic uniform, which looks really cool. And we also got confirmation that a bunch of new characters are going to be showing up as well. Apparently Kamala Khan's dad is going to appear in the show, so we'll see how he factors in. Then we got confirmation of a couple other new characters. We got confirmation that White Tiger is going to appear in the show. And I know the appearance of that character has been teased in sort of behind the scenes pictures and footage and everything like that. So it's good that we finally have that confirmation with that. And we also got confirmation that the character of Muse is going to be it as the new villain. And I'm not really super familiar about the character, but just from the images from the comic books, it looks like he's going to be a really dark character. And it's going to be interesting seeing the infighting between Daredevil and Kingpin, and then maybe like while they're doing their own conflict, character of Muse is going to have his kind of overall plan to take over the city and everything like that. So I think that'd be really interesting to see how he factors into the show as well. And also there's been an official synopsis that's been released. Apparently it's going to be about Daredevil and Kingpin seemingly teaming up in order to fight a new threat that's been brewing. So I think that'd be really interesting to do. have them have kind of like a unholy alliance, because at the end of the original Daredevil series, it seemed like the kind of this deal going on where they wouldn't expose each other for like who they really are in order to kind of like end the conflict within Hell's Kitchen. So it'd be interesting to see like how they team up and what their dynamic's going to be, and like how that tension mounts between them before they have to take on this overall threat. And apparently there was a trailer that was shown, and apparently it's fitting more into the Netflix tone that was established. So yeah, I'm actually really excited that, going back to having this kind of creative overhaul that they had with the show, and kind of having it fit more in line with the Netflix version of Daredevil. So I think that'd be really exciting. And a bunch of people are saying that there's kind of like a comparison to the movie Heat, where in that movie there was like a lot of tension between Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, and people are saying that there's a lot of tension between Matt Murdock and Kingpin. So I think that'd be really cool to see. I can definitely see the comparison between that movie and this series. We actually got a bunch of updates for Daredevil Born Again, the 2 videos that were released by Marvel, the 85th anniversary video and then the Disney Plus look ahead video. And at least for the first one, it definitely shows hints of the red costume that Daredevil will be in. You kind of see like some kind of like glowing red in his eye, and people are thinking like, is he like possessed or something like that? But I think it's really just like he's just seeing something in the distance that's like red and glowing, and it's kind of reflected in his eyes. Maybe it's supposed to be like Muse or something like that, but yeah, we'll see. And then of course we got the look ahead for Disney Plus video, and that definitely shows a whole bunch of different footage for Daredevil Born Again. Definitely shows the relationship between Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk, and how there's definitely like some tension between them, kind of like I was saying earlier, where the first footage was kind of like an homage to the movie Heat with the tension between Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and we're definitely getting more of that with Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk as they're trying to kind of navigate like what this big threat's going to be within the city, whether it be Muse or White Tiger or Bullseye or whatever threat that they're facing. But yeah, it definitely shows the tension really well. And of course there's a whole bunch of action that we get. Definitely feels just like the Netflix version of Daredevil, but just a little bit more refined. I'm so glad that they're picking up where they left off with the original series, and that they're definitely trying to emulate the tone of that series while also trying to make something new and try to get some new fans in there. But yeah, we got more Punisher, doing his thing, hiding right behind the corner, about to like shoot one of the guys through the wall. We definitely got a lot of Daredevil action, kind of hints at like a hallway fight, because that's one of the signature fights from Daredevil, is that, he's always going through a hallway and battling a bunch of guys. So that'd be really cool to see. But yeah, I'm definitely really excited for it. And back in September, Brad Winderbaum was in an interview, and he said that this is supposed to be like the most brutal and visceral action that we've had throughout the series, and that it's supposed to like pack a lot of power within it. So yeah, they're definitely honoring what came before while also doing something new. And yeah, it definitely gets me really excited for it for sure. And also back in October, Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays Kingpin, said that he and the rest of the cast were really happy with this iteration of the series. And like I was reporting earlier, that ideas for like the new series like weren't really all that great, and that they had to have this kind of creative overhaul. So it's really cool to see that Vincent D'Onofrio and the rest of the cast are really pleased with this iteration, and it looks like the studio and like the crew are really happy with this iteration as well. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of too bad that they had to kind of learn the hard way of kind of wanting to go their own way instead of kind of honoring what they had in the past. But I'm glad that they kind of had to go through all that in order to kind of give the fans what they want and kind of continue what was like already great beforehand with the Netflix version. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it definitely makes me happy to hear that, he's really excited about this iteration and that they're honoring what came before them in the past. And we also got confirmation within that Disney Plus look ahead video that the series premiere is actually supposed to be March 4th. We already knew that it was going to come out in March, but it's cool that we're actually getting confirmation for the 4th. It'll probably come out like right as Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is wrapping up, so we don't have to wait too long in between different TV shows. It's really cool to have like all this different stuff for Disney Plus, people who are more into like, the kid-friendly stuff, and then people who are kind of more into like the more adult stuff. So it can kind of please both audiences. If you like one or the other or both, you still have options. So yeah, 2025 is definitely going to be a big year for Marvel, and yeah, I'm definitely excited for it. Like I've been saying earlier, I'm just hoping that they can just keep the ball rolling with all this really cool content for Marvel, and that we can kind of get back to the glory days of the Infinity Saga, hopefully, and get a good wrap up to Phase 5 and then set us up for Phase 6. We also got a brand new trailer, which looks amazing. Just right off the bat, it definitely reflects the tone from the original Netflix series. I know that was the whole point that the creators were wanting to do, since the original version that they had was kind of very Disney Plus friendly. And then they decided to have this whole creative overhaul so they can match the tone of the original Netflix version. And yeah, it definitely shows, the action and like the violence, and like what the producers were saying about how like this is like the most brutal and violent action that we've had on Disney Plus. And I'm definitely not complaining about it. And then we also get more of the confrontation between Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk. And we have that whole kind of Heat-esque scene of the two of them in the diner talking about their past and how Wilson Wilson Fisk is no longer part of the mob. Now he wants to run for mayor, and how Matt Murdock is telling him that his past is probably going to come back to haunt him, and how Wilson Fisk is kind of turning the tables on Matt Murdock and saying that, why'd you stop being a vigilante and all this stuff, instead of him being like a legitimate lawyer, and how he's kind of confronting all the criminals in the streets with his fist instead of in the court. And also I'm glad that we're seeing like a lot of like different characters from the original Netflix series, like Foggy Nelson and Karen Page, and we saw a little bit of Bullseye, and of course Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, and we also see Vanessa Fisk, Wilson Fisk's wife. So again, I'm really excited that they're really continuing where they left off from the original Netflix series, and how the original Netflix series is now canon, and how they're just gonna continue to pick off where that storyline left off and make it kind of like the Daredevil that we've always wanted to see for all these years, and also see how it kind of fits into the overall MCU and kind of broaden the scope of what the MCU can be as far as like the street level characters. But yeah, it definitely gets me really excited for it. And we also got a brand new promo that reveals the TVMA rating, which totally makes sense because the promo is filled with hardcore violence and definitely presents a darker tone of the series. And at the end of the promo, it also revealed that there'll be a 2-episode premiere on March 4th. So that's going to be really exciting, which is kind of like a tradition for the Disney Plus shows, is that they have the 2-episode premiere just to get audiences more immersed into the world that they're presenting, which I'm not complaining about, the more the merrier. And we also got a bunch of character casting and story announcements. There's an article that came out in early February of the showrunner talking about the different aspects of the show. And he talked about Matt Murdock and how he kind of wants to kind of leave the whole vigilante side behind and become like more of a legitimate lawyer. And kind of like what I was saying earlier about how Wilson Fisk was talking about how, his past is going to come back to haunt him, and how that kind of vigilante nature is going to come back to him. And obviously we see that in the trailer where, he's going to put the cowl back on and take on crimes in the streets. So it's going to be interesting seeing how Matt Murdock is at the start of the series and how he slowly but surely becomes that kind of Daredevil vigilante again. And the article also said that Wilson Fisk is going to be flexing his darkness and his power and basically gaslighting the city and the country and the world, which again, like I said earlier about that whole conversation that Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk had at the beginning, where Wilson Fisk is trying to run for mayor, and then his past is going to come back to haunt him about like all the different crimes that he's committed. And I'm sure like as he's running for mayor, he's probably actually going to become mayor, and he's going to use that power to kind of take over Hell's Kitchen and kind of spread his influence more and more. And Vincent D'Onofrio was talking about his appearance as Kingpin, how he really wanted to sell his size, and at the end of the first season it'll be more specific and detailed, and how it'll kind of grow into his iconic appearance in the comic books in season 2. So that'll be interesting, because I know Kingpin in the comic books is like this very huge character, and obviously they try to do that in the Netflix series and Kingpin's appearance in the MCU, but I guess they're trying to do more of like a realistic take. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of make him more of like the iconic version that he is in the comic books. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season. And we also got more details on the character that Margarita Levito will be playing, of Heather Glenn, and how her and Matt Murdock's views on vigilantism kind of differ, and how that kind of leads to poignant conversations. So that'd be interesting, because I know that she's going to be playing like a love interest character for Matt Murdock. So I'm not really sure if she's going to like know that he's a vigilante, or if she's going to discover that she's a vigilante maybe like halfway through the series, and that's going to kind of complicate the relationship, kind of like Spider-Man hiding his identity from Mary Jane and then her eventually finding out. So we'll see what happens with it. I'm really excited to see Matt Murdock have a love interest, and how that kind of affects who he is as a person, and how his whole Daredevil persona kind of affects that relationship. And Dario Scartapane also talked about how Karen Page is kind of like the heart and soul of this whole mythology, and how she makes Matt Murdock more of a human being, which totally makes sense because Karen Page and Matt Murdock were definitely like best friends, in the original series, and it'd be really nice to see that kind of continue on into this new series. And we also got another casting announcement. There's an actor named Clark Johnson who will be playing the character of Cherry, who's a police officer who works with Matt Murdock. So that'd be really interesting. It'd be nice to have a kind of police officer character who's actually on Matt Murdock's side, instead of some of the other police officer characters who are kind of like working for Kingpin and working for the villains. And we also got confirmation that Michael Gandolfini's character, David Blaine, will be Fisk's protege. I think I saw a little bit of him in the trailer, so I think that's going to be really exciting. And he looked kind of uncomfortable when he was walking down the street. So I'm wondering if he's going to start off as Fisk's protege and then kind of slowly but surely realize the kind of error of his ways, and then maybe turn to Matt Murdock's side and then try to work with him to try to bring Fisk down. So we'll see what happens with that one. And Dario Scartapane said that he felt it was really important to have Foggy Nelson and Karen Page in the series, because he was saying that they kind of provide a family structure for Matt Murdock, which totally makes sense, based on the original series. They're kind of like this trio of best friends, and they were kind of like working together to not only solve crimes within the court system, but also solve crimes on the streets, and then obviously with Wilson Fisk and all the other villains. So again, kind of like I was saying earlier, I'm definitely excited to see these two other characters within the Daredevil universe, and I'm excited that the creators decided to bring them into this series just to not only create continuity from the original series, but also just so that Matt Murdock could have that support system that he really needs in order to kind of stay grounded and continue to stop crimes. And the creators said that this won't contain any material from the 4th season of Daredevil, and that this is going to be a brand new story, which totally makes sense, because you want it to fit within the MCU continuity, and you don't want to be kind of shackled by what the original creators from the Netflix series had from season 4. But again, I'm just glad that they're kind of taking like the main aspects from the original series and kind of telling their brand new story with this. So I'm actually really excited about that. And Dario Scarpane said he's going to be introducing a brand new character into the series, and he said that it'll naturally fit in the story due to it being set in the MCU's New York City. I have no idea who this character could be. Could be someone from the other MCU movies, or it could be a very obscure character from the comic books. But I'm thinking it's going to be someone from the MCU that we've seen before, and hopefully it'll be a character we haven't seen in a long time, and someone who will blend in naturally with this MCU version of Daredevil. And the creators were talking about the role that Wilson Fisk's wife has within the story, and how she was kind of taking over his criminal empire while he was away. And now that he's back, there's going to be some tension between the couple. So I think that'd be interesting, and I think it's really cool that they're kind of giving more for Vanessa to do, because she's kind of like the object of desire for Wilson Fisk, and kind of like his motivation to do all these kind of horrible things within the original series. So it's kind of cool that they're kind of giving her more of like a villainous role within the series, and it'll definitely be interesting to see how those two collide once we kind of get rolling within the story, and to see like what role she plays within this new series, you know, as a more antagonistic role within Wilson Fisk's kind of circle of influence. So that's something that'll be interesting to see. And Dario Scartapane was talking about how he wanted to have more fun character moments instead of kind of like the navel gazing that was in the original series, and how in that series a lot of people were kind of like talking about being heroes, and there wasn't really a lot of examples of them actually being heroes. So we wanted to have more of that within the series, which I'm totally fine with, you know, just based on the trailer. Like I was saying earlier, looks like there's definitely going to be a lot more action, a lot more violence. There will definitely be those character moments, you know, with two characters interacting with each other, but it looks like the characters are definitely going to take more of like the action within their hands, and, you know, actually kind of like say what they're doing instead of just like talking about it all the time. So I actually think it's a welcome change that the creators are having for the series. And Dario Scartapane also talked about how this is kind of like a classic New York crime story from like the 1990s. And he said he got a lot of inspiration from The Sopranos and from the 1990 film King of New York, which I haven't seen, but I obviously know all the influences from that. You know, Sopranos, you know, about a crime family and everything like that. So I can definitely see those influences, you know, while watching the trailer and watching all the different promos and everything. So yeah, I'm really excited that he's taking inspirations from all these kind of like 1990s crime movies and putting within the Daredevil universe, just to make it feel more realistic and more grounded. And lastly, Charlie Cox revealed back in January that filming for the second season will be happening in March of this year. So that's really exciting. So I'm not really sure like when the release date's going to be, like maybe sometime next year or 2027, but just basing on the quality of the trailers and the promos and just the overall excitement for the series, it looks like they're probably going to fast track season 2, and hopefully we'll get it sooner than later. And I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that this series is good and that it just kind of keeps the ball rolling for the excitement for season 2, just because, you know, phase 5 has been kind of hit or miss lately, especially with the kind of divisive reaction from Captain America Brave New World. So I'm hoping that Daredevil Born Again is an upswing for Marvel, and then we can kind of just keep the ball rolling with finishing off phase 5 and then lead us up to phase 6. So yeah, we'll see. But overall, I'm really excited for Daredevil Born Again, and I can't wait for the 2-episode premiere on March 4th.